G'day there ladies and gents of the internet, I am the Braveheart Aussie and welcome to another Journey in World Building video. Today I wish to say a big welcome to all my new subscribers. Over the past 2 weeks we've had more than a doubling in the number of subscribers on the channel, which is super exciting. I hope all of you are enjoying the world building journey we are on, and if interested, head over to the Patreon to support the channel and the work we are doing. Last time we moved from the economics of the Coalition to the religion of the Tarvan Covenant and explored the somewhat contradictory character of the Diaspora's leading religious institution. Like so much of the Diaspora, they represent both the best intentions of humanity and the horrific violence and terror of the universe. I've spoken a lot about the terrors of the universe so far in this world building project and in the scripted and narrated lore videos. This reflects the desire for continuously emphasizing the grimdark feel of the project. The Dark Diaspora is at its heart dark, and pseudo-horror elements are intrinsic to what defines the universe. This grimdark element is also what distinguishes it from other more traditional grand space operas, and aligns it more with the exemplars of Warhammer 40k universe and elements of the Firefly and Nightstorm trilogy. Today I would like to explore some of the terrors of the Diaspora. Firstly, let's define what I mean by a terror. For me, a terror is something that causes harm or immense difficulty for the people it afflicts. When I use it in the context, I'm primarily referring to something that threatens people's safety, well-being or prosperity in their everyday life. This could take the form of anything from a horrific monstrosity that patrols the landscape, to a gas or geomagnetic anomaly that affects people's very minds. As this is a dedicated world building project, I don't have a particular media format such as gaming or literature or film to work within that defines how these terrors are examined. Such formats can be very helpful in establishing the framework for defining key elements of the world, and in particular the extent of the detail required to allow the world to feel like it's being used. This is important as we are establishing an expansive universe with the express intention of leaving it open a myriad of possible settings, factions and even terrors to be created by the end user of the world. As someone who comes from a tabletop role-playing game background, I find myself taking on the role of the game or dungeon master in this world building project. In such a role, there's always a need to strike a balance between clarity and flexibility. One of the constant questions that gnaw at me as this universe evolves is how much information is needed on the world to afford it a living, breathing, immersive feel. And when do I stop? How do I prevent the process of world building itself becoming too restrictive to encourage independent creativity? For some settings, locations in the universe, significant detail is required. These locations are regarded as fundamental or foundational to the very character or structure of the world we're creating. The discussion last week, for example, of the planet Tarvan and its role, as illustrated in the lore video, as the seat of the largest single interstellar religion in the universe, is critical to the overall explanation of the Diaspora. Major planets, factions, organizations and environments will all be defined as collectively these set the scene for the Diaspora as a whole. For the rest, I'm going to steal a TTRPG mechanic to establish the framework for identifying the terrors of a particular location or setting. That of roll tables. For those not familiar, roll tables are a gaming mechanism where dice are used to select options from a predetermined set, i.e. the table. And multiple tables can be combined through successive rolls to build up something of a decision tree. So adopting a similar approach, let's create a rudimentary roll tables as an illustrative framework for the terrors of the Diaspora. Let's say we have a small settlement on a random planet, and we want to allocate a terror to that planet. The first role we might take might look at the nature or type of the terror. This would include 4 broad types: physical, social, psychological, and environmental. For physical terrors, this is the monstrosity end of the spectrum, focused on horrific creatures or monsters that are a risk to the residents of the settlement. Social terrors are more human-made and likely reflect the impact of factions, NPCs, or even a system of governance that causes harm, dread, and discontent. Psychological terrors are particularly fascinating. This may reflect something that impacts the mental state of the people that live in the area, causing nightmares, behaviour changes, or other type of mental incapacities. And finally, there are environmental terrors, reflecting the potential impact of landscapes, terrains, climates, or even natural environments that may represent a major challenge or source of calamity for the settlement. In the TTRPG, we would use a 4-sided die, or a D4, when selecting the type of terror. Once selected, the severity of this terror is important, as it informs the scale of the challenge the terror represents and the extent to which it has come into conflict with the ability of the settlement to expand and/or survive. Here we will use a scaling option, rolling a 10-sided die or a D10 to allocate a severity score, with a score of 1 meaning the terror is no more than just an inconvenience, versus a 10 where the continued existence of the settlement itself is under threat. This is critical as it sets the nature of the relationship between the settlement residents' hope and the impact of the terror on the settlement's basic functioning. Finally, I envisaged there being a roll table relating to how the settlers react to the terror. Here again, I want there to be multiple options that cover the full spectrum of emotional responses to the terror, including fear or terror of being terrified, anxious or perturbed, depressed or in a malaise, anger and mistrust, steadfastness, or being at ease or composed. These are not necessarily negative or positive emotions, more a question of impact on the general psyche of the residents and therefore their psychological baseline. Note that none of these tables go to the heart of the subject of what the terror is. That's a question of creativity. But it does establish a framework to define the type, severity, and significance of the terror, and a lot of other details can then be inferred or implied from this. Details like how is the settlement structured, the social order, the nature of the threat, and its circumstances and pervasiveness, and the way in which the settlers would potentially react to outsiders. So I have decided to use this approach to come up with an example of a local terror that may be facing a community or settlement in the diaspora, and this is the subject of this week's lore video. Make sure you listen to see if you can identify the different elements of the roll tables that I've used in this instance. But that is it for today. Thank you so much for sticking with me, and hopefully you are enjoying this project as much as I am. Subscribe if you have not done so already, and hit the notification bell to get notified when my world building and lore videos are released. So thank you so much, hope you all have a wonderful day, and may the journey continue.
Hey!